The man who supposedly proved that germs cause disease actually proved the exact opposite. And we have been ignoring his failures for over 100 years. You have probably heard of Robert Koch. He is considered the father of bacteriology, the guy who won a Nobel Prize and created the gold standard rules, known as Koch's Postulates, for proving that a specific microbe causes a specific illness. We are told in textbooks that he conclusively proved this link with anthrax, tuberculosis, and cholera. But when you actually go back and read his original papers and the work of his contemporaries, the story falls apart completely. Let's start with anthrax. Koch's theory was that livestock got sick by grazing on soil contaminated with anthrax spores. To prove this, he needed to replicate that natural infection. So, he started experimenting on mice. He fed these mice the spleens of animals that had died of anthrax. He fed them massive amounts of bacteria, way more than they would ever encounter in nature. The result? The mice stayed completely healthy. He couldn't infect them through their food. The only way Koch could get the mice to die was by taking wood splinters, dipping them in the bacteria, and stabbing them into the mice's tails, or injecting them with blood mixed with toxic chemicals. That is not a natural transmission. That is poisoning and trauma. Later, he tried to prove it with sheep. He fed them anthrax spores wrapped in potatoes. The sheep died, and he claimed victory. But there is a massive problem here. Potatoes are toxic to sheep. He was feeding them poison. When other researchers tried to feed anthrax to animals without the toxic potatoes, the animals were fine. Koch didn't prove the germ caused the disease. He proved that if you inject toxins into an animal, it dies. Then came tuberculosis, or TB. This was his claim to fame. To prove the TB bacteria was the cause, he had to isolate it and make a healthy animal sick with it. But right away, he hit a wall. He found the so-called TB bacteria in people who were perfectly healthy, which violates his very first rule that the germ must only be found in sick people. Since he couldn't get animals to catch TB naturally by breathing it in, which is how it supposedly spreads, he resorted to brute force. He injected the bacteria directly into the eyes, abdomens, and bloodstreams of guinea pigs. They got sick, and he said, "See? It's the bacteria." But here is the part history leaves out. Other researchers at the time, and even Koch himself, knew that you could inject sterile substances like crushed glass, wood, or clean sand into an animal's eye or abdomen, and it would cause the exact same disease pathology as TB. It wasn't the germ causing the damage. It was the invasive injection of foreign debris. He was creating artificial disease in a lab and calling it nature. Finally, look at cholera. Koch stated clearly that the only way to prove the cholera bacteria was the cause was to reproduce the disease in animals. He went to India and tried everything. He fed pure cholera cultures to mice, monkeys, cats, and chickens. He fed them the poop of cholera victims. Nothing happened. They all stayed healthy. He even injected the bacteria straight into their intestines. Still nothing. Because he couldn't force the result he wanted, Koch just decided to abandon his own rule. He literally moved the goalposts because his hypothesis failed. Meanwhile, other scientists were so skeptical of Koch's fraud that they put their lives on the line. A famous researcher named Max von Pettenkofer drank a glass of pure cholera bacteria in front of witnesses. He didn't get sick. He didn't die. He proved that the germ alone does not cause the disease. Robert Koch is held up as a scientific hero, but his own experiments refute the very theory he is famous for. He couldn't satisfy his own logical postulates. He couldn't replicate natural infection. He had to rely on grotesque, unnatural laboratory tricks to get the results he wanted. And even then, the evidence showed that inert sand could do the same damage as his deadly germs. We have built an entire medical paradigm on a hypothesis that was falsified by its own creator.